actually being discussed today. It's probably one of the first times in the course of the past 12 months where there's been any discussion from either side of politics on industrial relations. I'm less concerned about how it came about. I'm much more interested in the fact that industrial relations has passed the lips of the opposition leader, and I'm also very keen to ensure that there is a sensible, constructive discussion from both sides of politics on the issue, because our labour market is not standing still, and we have got some important deficiencies in the current framework that need to be addressed.
Now, all business groups have been pushing for a look at the Fair Work Act, at the government introduced to replace work choices. The Australian Industry Group today has said there are a number of problems with the Act. What do you think the problems are that need to be resolved?
Well, I think within 6 months of the Act coming into operation, we started to see some problems with the system. We've seen, even in the last week, rulings which have caused major difficulties for retailers in terms of their cost structures. After 3 rounds of national arbitration, we've only now got an opportunity for young people to be employed in after-school work in shops. We've seen tribunals come down with decisions that allow unions to go on strike before they undertake bargaining. And this week we've also seen a situation where trade union officials have effectively masqueraded as bargaining agents to get into industries where they haven't got any legal coverage. Now, they are the type of practical problems that need to be resolved, because the government said when it put these laws in place 2 years ago that they were going to strike the balance fairly. And what's clear is that the system is not operating on those issues the way the government said it would, and our labour market and our economy is not standing still. And that means our political leaders on both the government side and the opposition need to be prepared to engage in a sensible debate about improving our industrial relations system.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that said that it would need bipartisan support, given the change in the Senate, to get any changes through. Given that, will any changes have to be relatively incremental, because the government may not go as far as what you want them to do?
There are some changes that can be made which are of a major dimension to the framework, and some of those the government itself will have some difficulty with, and the business community will need to be realistic. But there are many changes that need to be made inside the government's framework to have the system operating fairly, and even as the government promised industry. We're not actually asking the government to go too far down the reform road. We actually can point specifically to things that the government said would work in a particular way when they're not working that way now.
And changes that would not be unfair on workers?
Absolutely not. I mean, how could you possibly say that a system of regulation which has led to young people not being able to work in shops after school is not unfair to them? They've lost their jobs as a result of that, as well as the businesses not being able to provide work experience to those kids. The government said that its new awards will not increase the labour costs and the cost structure of businesses. That's a promise that's completely been trashed. If the government goes back to some of the principles that it said would apply in the new system and compare it to the way the system is now operating, there are a number of areas where gaps exist. We don't need to make radical changes to fix those gaps. What we need to do is to have a very deliberate attempt and effort by government to acknowledge that there are some issues. Unfortunately, politics has got in the way of this issue.
There is, though, an inbuilt review in the Act coming up 2 years after it fully came into operation. Is that the point in time when you're hoping to convince the government to move?
Well, it's quite inadequate to say we will wait for a 2-year period and then 2 years after that before we will deal with the issues that are current, which arise here and now. There's simply no comfort to kids who have been sacked from doing after-school work to say, well, in 2 years' time we might have a look at this situation. That's simply unsatisfactory. It's no comfort at all to a business which has not had to deal with a particular union to face a demarcation dispute because union officials are manipulating the rules and getting into that business when they have no legal right to do so. They are real issues that businesses face. The labour market and the economy don't stand still. We need a system of continuous improvement. And both sides of politics have to get their head out of the sand on industrial relations, realise that we don't need to make radical change to fix some of the problems that businesses, including small businesses, face.
Peter Anderson, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Lyndal.